All right, so let's begin the practice by sitting in front of a rolled blanket. And as you sit in front of our blanket stacks behind us, we have one that's rolled, and then we have one that's in a flat quarter fold, and I added a towel on top. And you can always slide it off if it seems like it's too easy or you want to kind of break through. So if you have a breakthrough, a moment when you feel like you can loosen up the kind of the thoracic jangles, right? If they kind of jingle and loosen, you'll feel when it's time. So let's bring our legs so the feet float on the bolster, and then scooch your seat to it. And as you start to lower back, notice where your props are. You want to have easy access to your sandbag. I would place it farther towards the back so that when you pull it towards you, it's pretty easy to get. You don't have to drag with your wrist. So as I lower back, I have my blanket, so it's right under my shoulders, okay? I could put my spine in the lumbar column. Really feels like it's lengthening and it's strengthening. And then as you set your head back on the towel or blanket addition, you might find that the feet on the bolster, knees up, is a little easier association for the arch of the spine. Now, as we assess where we want our blanket exactly, I like to feel where my back is in a wave, like it has that natural curve. It's got a wave through the spinal column. So see if you can catch your breath when you're getting that wave articulated, and then maintain good distancing with your feet. So the arch in the spine, you can feel the sacrum gradually center. You might move your ribs a little, tilting forward and back like a miniature cat-cow motion to bring some circulation and actually mobility to your back. And then try to reach back for your belt, so you'll hold on to the belt with a wide, expansive reach for the chest wall, and then let your eyes center back into the skull. And noticing there's plenty of things to notice sound-wise, but see if you can start to drop into the currents of your breath. Centering on the breath, arriving into your practice. If it's a little tense in the low back, I recommend, instead of trying to force your back deeper into the blanket, right? You might work for a few moments to feel what is it like if you let the legs kind of toss them forward on the bolster. And the knees roll out a little bit. Maybe that's easier on your back. Okay, give it a few moments. We're going to spend maximum another minute here with the blanket under the base of our shoulders. So I'm going to encourage you to hold onto your belt this whole duration and have accessibility to the peeling open of the ribs. Breathe to get that heat into that core zone. And feel where there might be some pulling in the belly, like lengthening, stretching, tone the core. Think of this as a deep warm-up for the spine. Okay, now move your belt by holding with your hands over your chest. This is very important to have it above the chest. And feeling how the back responds, and move the belt back overhead. Now alternate this pattern of over chest and overhead about 4 more times. See if you can stay with the energy of movement and the suggestion of breath exhaling, and feel which direction that is most adaptable for you. Maybe the exhale is when you bring your arms overhead. Last time. So simply an assessment period in the beginning. Okay, let's leave our belt overhead, and we're going to carefully bend through the knees, feet center. I tend to lean over to the side, like all the way over, and then push my blanket out. And then when I roll back onto my flat back without a blanket, my blanket tube is on the side yard. All right, happy. Okay, so place a couple blocks besides your thighs and let your knees motion open to relax the leg pieces. Think of them as pieces here onto the block support. So I have my blocks fairly high, and I'm going to pivot the block so it has a little contour on my thigh external rotation, and then feel that basin of the knees down into the pelvic floor. And let's add a sandbag across the ribs now. So feel where the sand is at the base of the sternum. So I think of right where the ribs intersect, and it's below where it would be uncomfortable on your chest. Right there though, right attached to that space. Yeah, feel what fusses around the most in your experience. Part of this is getting to know your body, kind of bear witness to what is holding on, and then feel where would your arms be holding the best space for the body to open up. Maybe it's stretching out to the T shape. Maybe it's back to the cactus. And for some of us, it might be overhead. So these three patterns with the arms, I think, are useful when we move through the combing of the ribs today. Then we'll move down into the hip column. So this is a good study in where do you feel that you're able to breathe as long with your exhale as your inhale. So if you stutter with the breath, then you might find you need to move your arms. So it's an easy flow. Remember, this is restorative. Yeah, invite the currents of circulation through the legs into the side body. Try to wake up the cells of the side body with breath, filling it up. Soften the ribs on the out breath. Soften the belly. This might feel like more of an entry pose than the first one. Now feel where the weight of the lower back, that's where it gets a little more stable in our body, rests into the ground. Feel your feet push in together, so there's some vibration of tone through the inner thighs. And then go on letting go of that pressure of the feet. Let the thighs feel like they move out. Reach down or slide your hands down to the blocks, and then turn the blocks so that the lowest height besides your legs, and if they don't touch the blocks, that's okay. Just notice, where is your range of motion? Where is your range of motion at this time of day? Probably the tenser time of the day, right? And you're less warmed up from movement. It's a good time to get into this practice. So as we work on postural assessment, next time you Start to guide your knees out. Now try to push your feet in deeper together. So my blocks aren't touching to my legs at this point. I could slide them in so my thighs easily touch, but I'm hovering over the blocks with my knees. Okay, now get a feel of your thigh muscles rather than binding and gripping and efforting. Feel if you can let your feet push a little bit on the little toe side, the knees motion out, and then as we guide our legs back up to center, press down into your feet, and I want you to actually bring the right foot up to the left knee and feel that right knee motion out. Okay, cross the right leg completely as it can over the left and guide your knees to the right side. Yeah, these kind of layers, right, through the IT band, kind of winding through the thigh groove. So I'm just observing the texture and sensation from my last pose, how this motions into warming up the tissues. My sandbag could be off of me if it feels like it's interrupting my progress. And then as you come back in center, right ankle to the left knee, and I find this might be the time to take off the sand. So I'd reach under the left leg and come into thread the needle 1. So I pull the left leg to my left side of my rib cage. So if you're holding behind the leg and it's hard to get agreement, you know your flexibility might be a little bit more advanced. Sometimes holding below the left knee can bring it in deeper. But that's only if your left knee will agree to that. Right foot flexes. Try to get that right foot pretty sharp. Sharpen up your feet. Sharpen up the ligaments. With actually movement. And then as I start to transition here, I'm going to encourage you to try something a little different. So we cross the right leg over the left and we reach up to the shins and the left leg presses into the right leg. So it's called steer pose. So when I'm on my back, my legs are in a crossing at the knees. It's so similar to when we do the elbow crossing and intertwine the arms, right? It's very similar to that. We're just leaving out the intertwine of the legs around the ankles. So feel the leg away, that's farthest away from you. Try to push into the right leg. Yeah, there can be kind of wicked sensations that start to get felt through the hip. So you might rock a little side to side. A few moments. We'll be kind of jostling into the hip tissues. Okay, now as you let go of the legs, they are happy to shift down to the bolster likely. Uncross and windshield wiper knees side to side. If the blocks are in the way, shift them aside so that you get free range. You want to feel that the roaming of the hip, right? It's quite suggestive here that when I lean side to side and I move, I'm trying to get my waist to stretch too. Yeah, even if you want to get a little free and kind of kick a leg out, that's good too. But we're trying again to work on thoracic, spine, and rib cage, even though we're into the legs. We're still attaching. Now, come back center, and then get a feel of that left leg. So we're going to cross that left leg over the right leg, and then let the knee shift over to the left. And get a feel here. Feel the waist. If you like that sandbag on the ribs, you could bring it back. Okay, now since it's a little curvy in the bone zone here, right, we have to use our muscles and their movement and their frequency to help actually strengthen around the bone. So try to let the feel of the muscles kind of move with the sensation of stretching or creating space in the body. Give it a few moments. If you like a block under the legs, just add it. This is considered a counter twist. We're not quite to twisting yet. A little bit of twist, counter twisting. So emphasize the leg piece that's moving, not so much the spine rotation, although it does rotate a bit. Now, of course, it's up to you on your timing here. It feels like a little bit more could be searched out here. You might stay with it. You know, heck, you might end up really wanting to put sandbag on that. So that's, you're very free at home to add props. And then as the knees come back in, we slide the left foot to the right knee. And I like the reaction of feeling my spine straighten out. Use my core big time. You might even put a hand on your belly. And then as the knees draw in on their own, you know, feel that belly motion and the weight of the waist on the ground, and hold behind the right leg. Hold so well that you're dedicating this thread the needle pose to your left hip. Sometimes you can do something that simple. So when you pull the leg to you, you can hold behind or below the right knee, behind the right thigh and then below the right knee. You can't do both at the same time. You can only choose one. But if the knee is adapting to the spine, you'll get a little bit more out of the sensation and the actual success of circulation in the meridian line on the inner thigh, which is what we did just a few moments ago, right? When we had our feet together. I'll review it quick, don't go into it, but with the knees out, Baddha Konasana, this just adds to that. Now, if you want to go to steer pose now, anytime, at your pace, left leg crosses in front of right leg, holding on, pulling in. You get that feel through the hip. Yeah, if it's particularly tricky in the hippie here, you might cross a little side to side, rock a little side to side is what I mean, so that you get a feel of motioning. Right, rocking is therapeutic anyhow, if you go side to side, forward and back. Therapeutic, right, for the connective tissue. So as you feel where the muscles are attending to here, it's probably cross fibers, but rather than analysis, feel if you can flex your feet. Let's not judge if we can get them crossed or not. If you can feel this left outer buttock, I guess there's outer, there's back, there's all different layers there, but as I pull, okay, so we're going to stay with that feel of the left hip. So reach around to your belt. You're already there, right? Your leg is already close to you, so this makes it a little easier. And we place the belt under our left ball of the left foot. Lower the right leg to the bolster. Just let it go free. Stretch the left leg straight up. Flex the foot. Yeah, and no hard feelings about it for your leg, but it does the best it can to be an upright leg at this position. It's your mind that's going to kind of take charge of what you do. So as you cross the left leg to the right, I try to keep it right at the hip level. You know, unless you had some real wonky flexibility, would it be going over your shoulder? But as you cross over, you do have the option of guiding that left leg downstream a little bit. which is kind of what we were starting to get into. The right leg on the bolster doesn't allow you to get so twisty yet. It kind of prevents you from getting into any extra motion. So left arm is spreading open. Left heel reaches downstream. So we started with the leg going across, and now we're pushing downwards. Yeah, the right knee can bend. But I want you to try to stay with your back muscles centered on the floor. Opening the chest, stretching out the left arm. Relax your eyes. Yeah, try to let all these therapeutic motions in our hips start to take up residence in our backs, not just our legs. A few more breaths here. Now the right arm is helpful, right? It supports this engagement. So without that hand holding the belt, you wouldn't have the same stretch. So yeah, give a little bit of an applause to that. Arms work, but feeling that the arm is actually holding the belt. It has a little bit of tension. So I'm going to encourage you to feel that left hip, but almost like you're trying to roll it forward. It's pretty stuck in this attachment mode. Not going to go too much farther likely. And then we'll bend the left knee and we'll slide the right foot on the bolster so the knee is out. I'm going to place a block right next to my left hip, and you might like this too. It might be a little elementary, but it's helpful, I think, for alignment. So when my left leg stretches up, I'm going to hold the belt with the left hand, take that left leg out, and externally rotate. You know, all these layers of poses come back to our second pose today. So it's all relational. When the right foot is resting, if you find you could use a block below the right thigh, use it. Just pat it under that right thigh. My left knee feels a little bit of too much sensation here, a little too much pressure. So you might micro bend the left knee if that starts to hyperextend. If you feel one side of the knee has more stretch than the other, monitor and kind of manage the pose. Yeah, so feel that trickle effect through the inner thigh. The right arm could be out to the side. The hand could rest on your belly to monitor your breathing. Sometimes you forget to have that accessibility to a slow, deep breath. So touching the belly can be useful. And now we feel the inner thigh sensation. You know, it's different than a hip sensation, that's for certain. This is going to be more like a muscle that's stretching, right? A little more of a pure muscle versus when we go to the hip, there's so many different intricate muscles and fascial layers. So when we bend the left knee, it doesn't have to bend much, but when you bring that leg back up, swap here. Let's actually bring both feet up first and feel your feet push up. You might kind of rock a little side to side. Push your feet, push your feet. Try to push them up even. And mentally, let your eyes close and feel if there's any difference from right to left. I mean, I feel difference from left to right, personally. There's certainly that dominant, little more space in the back of my left hip. Now, when we change sides, we're going to lower the left leg on the bolster. And then as you close off the belt, hold it with your left hand and cross it to the right leg goes left. Now, keep in mind, you do not have to use this block that's on this side. It may already be there. You could always add sand. We'll be getting to sand soon. But if you want to add it now, that's okay. I'm trying to use the delivery method of the belt versus the sandbag to change the intensity. So if I add too many props, it just gets kind of busy. So sometimes clarity is important here. So it's an option. So when I push the right foot downstream, right? Some of us get a click in the hip on this one. So you might be a little cautious here on how much you want to get kind of popping things. So if it happens at first and it adjusts something, okay. But get a feel. You can always place a hand onto the right hip and try to monitor the right foot pushing downstream. If it goes straight across and that's a good kick in the hip, you could stay with that. Right arm stretches back open if it was back on the hip. Roll your head to the right. Yeah. And at this point, if that towel is still on top of your blanket, you might take it off so that you can start to stretch your upper back differently. These little things matter. Even just a towel does make a difference. So cross over. Almost forgot about that towel. So push downstream. Feel the weave in the hip. This is pretty hip loaded. Bend the right knee. Get ready to swap, but go slow. So right hand holds the belt. Left foot steps up and knee turns out, and right leg sweeps open. Yeah, so consider how when you open your arms out wide, right? Wind's coming at you, you can easily open up the ribs. The threshold there is different than legs. Well, for one, they don't stretch out that way during the day. So this is probably a little more vulnerable. So having a block right next to my right thigh is a huge help for me. So even if my flexibility was there to go external, I can try to root my sacrum and the lumbar spine here. So that's a very stable vertebral setting, right? The lumbar vertebrae are very stable and pretty chunky, right? They're the widest vertebrae you have. Hopefully their density is intact. Okay, last time with this leg sweep here. Right, still open on the right side. Okay, there's no foot pushing. That's an interesting part, especially like down onto something. So when the foot is out, they're both externally rotated. Try to get your wits about you here when we transition to bridge pose. Feel that ability to arch your back. And I want you to try to let the mid-back, the mid-vertebrae, towards the upper back, press into the floor. Start to move your left knee back up center, the right leg comes up, and simply take your belt off the foot. Lower the right foot besides and place a block between the knees. Block is narrow, right? So it's the first setting. The arms are getting ready to help out. So you could use a setting change, right? I'm going to reach down to hold the sides of my mat. My blanket under my head is, I don't know, it's questionable. I like to do bridge pose without a blanket, but I could use one sometimes. It depends on the massage of the spine. So if I have my hands down, just for this part of it, take my blanket out. Now you can tell when you lift up your hips in bridge, kind of carry on, keep going, hips go up. You'll feel that if I have something under my head, it impedes that circulation all the way to the brainstem. So you want to have a little space at that base of the brain, right? That brainstem, the brainstemmal. Okay. So my hands press, although it's hard to get them to push. If I turn my palms open, I can feel my arms press down. If I put my palms down, it's a little challenging because now my shoulders roll in. So feel when your arms go overhead, and then lower your spine. Keep your arms overhead. Try to, you don't have to, but try. And let the spine completely lengthen. Now squeeze the block, lift your hips up, press downwards. Exhale, reach your arms forward to your legs, lower your spine, ease the back. So we're starting to create momentum here. Alternate. Inhale, hips up, arms overhead, waist lengthens. Exhale, lower down. It's nice to have a sequence once a week that is like this, and I know some of you have been, you've been here 2 or 3 times a week, so it's good to get variations on how you start your practice. This is often in the end sometimes, but we're trying to get these waves of motion through the spinal column. Lifting up the hips, take about 2 more. If you would like to go without your arms moving, go for it. You could have your arms beside you, palms open. Don't have to be moving all the time with both extremity sets, arms and legs. But the legs really move as one unit to massage the spine, right? They're there to lift up your hips and to move through the spine. So just consider on a fundamental level what's going on here with the legs and the spine. So let's try this out. As you lower down your spine, arms are now beside you. Okay, shoulders are back, so my palms are open. Get a belt, slide it under your tush, then sit back down. Well, actually lay back down. All of a sudden we're sitting down. So palms are open and we're holding the belt, and my hands are right beside my buttocks. Okay. So my arms are straight. Now if your arms aren't straight, your belt might be below your buttocks. Depends on your arm length. However it is, arms are straight. Shoulders are back. Lift up the ribs. Okay, without lifting up your hips. Inhale. Exhale, push into your feet, lift up your hips. Okay, hold on to the belt, seize the belt. Shoulders back, walk your hands in closer on the belt. If they get to pinkies close, that's fine. But I want you to try to roll your shoulders back and down into the ground and feel the grippy thigh band. Notice if your knees could be wider. They can't right now because of the block, but maybe you would have the block on the next setting next time. Okay, so push down with your feet, tone through the legs, shoulders back, and then you slide the hands out on the belt, let go, and lower the spine down. Okay, take a block, place the block now under the sacrum. Mid-height would be nice, but if you find the low height is best, that's okay. So as I lift up my feet, that means the feet are up to the ceiling, so they're holding the ceiling up. This mid-height might be a little intense. I'm going to reach for my belt again. I think it's still there. I got a little bit of it. So I'm going to hold onto the belt, palms open, and move the shoulders back and down. So this is a pretty lifted rib spatial position. So we're going to do this inversion twice today, and this is kind of through the first phase of the session. You know, we're a little past that, but we are past that. But get a feel of the feet lifting, yeah, especially when you have a block under your sacrum. The spatial dedication is different. Are you willing to push up with your feet? Does that take you off the block? So feel the isolation of the lower back and the sacrum to the block, the back of the pelvis. Separate the legs so that there's some space. Try to keep the legs lifting by pushing up into your heels. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of analysis here with your alignment, so try to stay true to it. Even if you're going to stay true and kind of pure with good alignment, this would be your time to do it. Okay, now I feel a little bit of low back pull. So I want you to try without pulling on the belt and see if you let go, if that changes anything in your back. And now move your elbows out, your hands back into cactus arms. Feel the chest gently widen. Keep the feet active, right? Try to let the feet still hold up the ceiling. I know, come on, let's let go pretty soon. Okay, so with the feet in this position, you're going to move the feet a little farther out, a little farther out. Now, if you can go outwards and outwards and outwards so you're in a wider angle, that's great. You don't have to go into the full splits here, but get a feeling of the motion of the legs and the balance in your lower back ridges. Okay, now get a feel here as you push up into your heels. And bend the knees a little, and then bring your feet together. Feel that bend of the knees as the feet start to lower, and the difference in your belly muscles, right? How they change their tone, right? When the legs are up, you're changing the way gravity flows through the organs, right? Which is the opposite of prolapse. And then when I start to lower my feet, I can feel a grippy in my belly. So I'm going to lower down one at a time then, a little safer. And then push into the feet, lift up for that pelvic floor tone, lift up the hips. You probably are now over the block you're hovering over, you've surpassed it. You might feel a little bit of that block. Okay, now use a hand to slide it out, and we'll go right into the promised land of hip crossovers. So spine down. Yeah, maybe a blanket goes under your head for sure on that one, right, when you get down. Okay, so let's kick out to the left hip. So we're gonna move our bolster over to the right side, okay, of your space. And take a few alternating wind relieving poses, or the poses that are helpful for our lower lungs. So alternate knee to chest. Try to be rather speedy on it compared to what we've been doing, slow wise. So alternate knee to chest. My leg barely touches all the way down when it lowers. So it's a little more core work. Okay, so see if you can let the leg that stretches down not touch down. So keep that core zone. Okay, now lower the right leg completely. Shake it out. And find your sandbag. Place it so it's over to the left side. Cross the left leg over to the right. And yeah, feel what it's like if you use a ball usually at your sacrum. That starts to become, I think, a little dependency at the time. So if it's really soothing for you, you just use it, okay? But here we have, my belt stuck there like it's measuring something. I'll leave it. Okay, leave it if it's not really bothering you. Okay, so placing the sand to that external left thigh and adjust things so that you feel this side flap like it's one whole lane of travel through the left side. It's like maybe if you were driving on it as far as travel, you kind of have to make a little swerve, but get a feel of that cross fiber through the left hip. Yeah, this might feel good to get the sand a little lower sometimes, maybe higher for some on the hip, maybe not lengthwise, but you can turn the sandbag as well. If you got a couple of them, you could do both. You could have one lengthwise and one stacked over. And it's good for weight bearing anyway. It's good for the bone density. So having the pure weight on you is helpful. So head turns left a few moments to truly get centered on the crossover. Maybe the eyes close. Maybe the breath feels the experience of filling the body. Try to feel how the organs really rest from the gravity's influence here. This crossover changes their shape. It changes their environment that they're in. So protecting that environment with slow, deep breaths. And keep in mind the blanket under your head might need to be adjusted so that you're completely relaxed at your neck. Feel a few more slow breaths. Now feeling from that rotation, moving the weight off last. So you have a ball at the sacrum, move that first, and then move the weight off of the left side, and feeling as you move that left leg back in that you're going to hold the leg, and with just your arms, both of them. Left hand holds the left knee, right hand holds the left foot, sorry. And I'm trying to move my leg towards my collarbone, this whole lower piece from my knee to my ankle, the lower piece below the knee. And clearly this external rotation of the upper thigh is a little bit challenging. Okay, so I'm trying to hold very consciously on my right hand and my left foot, pulling. Now my right leg is straight-ish. That's a challenge on its own. So I'm going to try to push down into that right heel. Okay, try to keep the spine back. All right, now slide the right foot in and then switching. So I'll put my left foot on the right knee and let that left hip open for a moment before I get to the other side. So just kind of evaluate. When you're here, it's probably fairly easy to get this to open. But when you're here, it's not the same, right? It's not quite the same with that resistance with the thigh fibers. So there's always further to go to open up. So I take my bolster to the left side. Okay. Before you put your foot behind your head. All right, so when my left leg lengthens down and then the right leg crosses over. Okay, feel the stance of the arms, the stance of the lower back. This whole lower back tundra is having a good time hydrating in this position. Yeah, mobility is hydrating to the tissues. So you'll probably get sand on before if you're going to use that ball, because you want to know where the spacing will be appropriate, how far you're going to stretch the leg over. And sometimes you don't know until you get your sand on. Okay. So feel that crossing through. Now we've been on our spine spatially for a while before we come back up. Soon enough we'll get up. We never were up. We'll get there soon. So get a feel for this cross through. Really try to milk this back opening cycle, right? Especially before we get up and see where we're at for the rest of the day. So get the most out of it. So if you have two sand, use them. So that's going to give traction for the thigh. If you've got one, perfect, use it. And the right arm is open. And I'm trying to get my ribs basically to start to twist. So I'm turning my head to the right, so the weight of my brain stretches it out. Your left arm could be open. It could be helping these ribs to feel that costal softness. So a nice, I think, focus most of the time is to soften the ribs. It's not like you want to get them to be more rigid. To help them spread, it's probably soften. right? It can be a little emotional, right? So get a feel of the space opening, loosening. It's closest to the heart of all the vertebrae. Now, as my leg is centering, you can maybe sometimes feel a little bit of uncertainty with the position. So if you want a blanket under your leg, I didn't offer that idea, but if there's a little grippiness in the inner thigh, or it twitches, or it's almost to the point of a little tiny shake, put something under it so that you'll avoid that focus. It happens. So with a few more moments, really feel that length in the back, not just the hip, but the back. Okay, a few more. To stay with the energy. What's helpful here is to feel all the isolated parts become kind of one shape that you're working through. Now, what moves first, right? It's probably that right leg hinging at the hip. So feel as if the right leg is moving closer to you, like it's going towards your core. Usually when you think of you, you point to your heart, maybe your brain. Now we're going to keep that leg in cycle, so when we come up with our knee, that's all we're coming up with so far. Holding on to the lower bones, right? So from the right foot to the left, to the right knee. Left hand is holding on to the right foot. You're moving that knee open, that right knee open. So I'm really trying to get that hinge to get a little bit more mobility and hydrate the tissues. You give it a few more seconds. Doesn't have to be a whole lot of time. Now slide the left foot in, bring the right foot to the left knee, and feel that knee open. Yeah, it might even make a little bit of a noticeable click, okay? Maybe you have click hip. All right. So when we start to come up, these places are going to be back working en masse, okay, like they do when you get around during the day. So they don't know their isolation opportunity till you stretch them on their own. So if you got a belt under you, slide it out because we don't want to trip on it. So as I feel the knee open, now I'm going to bring my knees in center and roll up, okay? Reach back and take your blanket in. If you don't like to do table pose with your blanket under your knees, don't do it. Might not be something you like to do. So if you have a blanket under your knees, go on. Okay, knees on. Bolster forward. Okay, come back to down dog. Toes under, reach the hips back. Okay, feel what's up with your hips after all that work that we did with the legs, with the hips. Feel your footing a little wider than hips distance. Yeah, try to go on with the feel at the hips back and the arms reaching. Okay, now if your forehead lowers to the bolster, perfect. Try for it. And then lift up your heels, try to get the heels up and the seat back. Heels up, seat back. Keep going, carry on with the heels up, seat back length. Okay, now as you reach your brain forward so that the load moves off of my upper arm, now it goes to my lower arms. And then just simply lower your knees down. Okay. Let's take cat-cow with some movement patterns. So my hands under my shoulders. My toes are relaxed, so my shins press. Now again, if you don't need a blanket, you might find some different stretching occurs in your shins without one. Okay. So hollow the belly, chin to chest. Inhale, reach your hips back towards your feet. Forehead down. Feel the breath moving in and out. And then when you're ready for the next inhale, You're going to move all the way forward to up dog. So my hands are too far back towards my hips, so I'm going to move them forward and adjust. Just like any creature would adjust. So when you come back to table, round your back to cat. Reach the hips back to child. And inhale forward to up dog. Okay, now come through the cycles. Feel when you come back to table and cat pose. When you reach back to child's pose, keep going with the pattern. And then when you inhale to up dog. So if you come back to table and you take an inhale, and then you exhale to cat. Inhale to child. And then exhale. So you can play with the breath pattern. Right? Sometimes the inhale going forward makes the most sense, but for the diaphragm, it's the opposite reality. That's better, but we have our habits, I think. So play a bit for a few moments. If this is very confusing, let's get back to the simplicity. We reach back to our child's pose. We come forward to up dog. There's a few mobility issues that we work through. And we come back to table and to cat. We'll meet at cat pose. Meet at cat. Okay, now feel the neutral zone of the spine. Come back to that arch. And I want you to develop the knees motion so they're closer. The toes are going to hook under. And you're going to lift back the left leg and stretch it straight back. Okay. Now, right arm forward, working on the actual bone density on this pose. So it's not only coordination, but for our bones. So if your left hand is too far front, you might have to adjust. Bring it in under your shoulder. Not required, but helpful for me. Right arm reaches forwards. And we're going to go into what's called parigasana. So really a side reaching pose, gateway. So my right hand is on the floor, both hands are down. And then turn the left hip open and reach the inside of that left foot to the floor and span the left arm up. Right. So feel the reach from that left side body through the left arm over the side of your face. Yeah. Try to reach on through the upper arm. Pivot through the waist. Yeah, let this be a rather deepening side position. Now I can turn my head towards the bolster, which is kind of a relief. So instead of seated side stretch today, we're working on more of a on all fours side stretch, so a little bit more strength required. So if you get tired out, you can always come back to child's pose anytime. So give it another few seconds here. Feel where the weight is in the right wrist. Now, when you reach the left arm back up, okay, try to feel how you spiral open through the chest. And then as you lower down with that left hand, you could use your left hand on the bolster here. And then I want you to take a simple position where the left foot steps up to the side of your bolster. It's on the side of my mat, really. And then as I walk my hands forward, I lean down so my right thigh is now being attended to. Okay. So my right quad and hip flexor are stretching. Now the blocks would be nice. I have to admit, I wish I had my blocks here, so I might get back to them. But you can also put your elbows right in together on the bolster. Okay, and this could be adaptive for you. So when the top of the right thigh leans into the bolster, feel your elbows press, feel your spine stretching. It's a very small part of your spine that gets to stretch. It's primarily into the front of the right thigh and maybe the left inner thigh. What do you think? Some sensations. That's some sensation. You know, when the hands lower down, we try to move back with our brain, crown forward versus pushing my head up. So try with yourself, feeling the hands press, feel the hips move back first, like you're coming into a reverse lunge. So you're going to lean back, lean back, lean back. Okay? So you have your back almost in that cat shape. And then slide that left knee back and go right into the other side. So right leg is back. Stretch back through the heel. Left arm is going to reach forwards. Okay, now this is obviously a wrist change through that we do on each side. We get both of them to work. So see if you can feel from this right inner arm up into the chest working, right? So that has to be part of this. All these openers we did in the beginning for the chest may be helpful, but you may need more of them. Okay. There's always more work, and it's usually just to keep practicing consistent. So left hand on floor, both hands down. My right foot's gonna turn so that the inside of the right foot is on the floor. And then when my body spirals to open on the right side, feel the arm lift. Feel the right arm stretch over the side of your face. Okay. Head looks down. Maybe it's better if your eyes look down, or close your eyes and kind of surf through the sensation on the side, the right side. Not on the side of your mat or your bolster, but your physical side, where you can feel. Okay, now lower the right hand. So I'm going to try to keep reaching and reaching and reaching. So this whole side landscape of the waist is stretching. Now when you step the right foot to the top right corner, walk the hands, or maybe you're going to bring your elbows on down to the bolster and go right into that thigh band sensation. Yeah. Now it's almost like the splits, right? It's like that type of motioning through the front of the pelvis. So feel if you can sense the length of your left thigh. If you want your blocks under your elbows, get a hold of them. They only serve you well sometimes in this practice. The back leg can lengthen. I can bend the knee. Even though we didn't do this first side, you can always kind of get a feel for how the thighs adapt. You have one front thigh stretching and one inner thigh stretching. It's good you only have two of those to monitor. Okay, now we're going to take it into a side sage pose. And since we have this right thigh, inner thigh kind of warmed up, I think it's most adaptable for alignment to keep that warmed up. So I'm actually going to face a little bit away from you to do that, just so that we have the right side going first. So when I slide my hands in besides my bolster, I'm going to reach, and actually your bolster with a blanket under it might be ideal for you. You be the decider here. So here's something I'm going to work with. I'm going to stretch my right leg back. I'm going to pivot onto my left hip, and I'm going to take my bolster. So it's lengthwise. Now it could be like this. You could go simply here, left arm, right arm over. Okay? You can also do something like this, where you've got your block on the other side, besides your arms overhead, and you've got your other blanket, right? Your other blanket on top of the block. Okay, so you've got, if you have your towel, you can add that too. Make it work good though. Make it so, this is going to be a good pose. Okay, so I stretch through, and then I add my sand. If you've got something under your right inner knee, that could be great too. Okay, so lengthen. So going on with this position now, if your right knee has any twitch about it, if there's any no good about it, get something under the inside of the knee. So when my right arm reaches, I've got the waist to focus on. I've got a waist to go. Yeah, I think a block or a ball on the inside of the knee is preferred. And you can tell when you just look at hip alignment that it seems wise. It's a wise choice versus this turn of the knee in. So it's up to you. If you don't have any issue with it, then probably not a useful tip. Okay, so when I lengthen, I might spend some energy. Now that you're getting used to putting your sand on, you'll probably find that the body absorbs it nicely. Okay, now let the back strengthen by the side stretch. Feel the arm either up, open, or over the side of your head. Few breaths here. Probably another 6 to 8, get enough time. Brain rest into the support under your head. Make sure it's not too much support. Right, you don't want too much. You want to feel like your neck is lengthening, not starting to crimp up to your to flexion. You know, as your right arm opens or it goes down, either way, feel what is best for your shoulder blade here. Notice your shoulders. Okay, so in between, let's come back to table, so to all fours. So be cautious of the arms. You're going to rotate back in. Okay, and we're going to take down dog. So if you are okay with down dog, if you prefer to come back to child's pose, that's fine. But I'm going to move my knees up and my hips back and see if I can walk the hands a little farther forward. So I'm in a pretty long dog pose. Okay. So the hips reach back and up. Now your feet, press the heels towards the floor. Not all dog poses are the same, right? So your heels might both be equally up, or one might go down easier than the other. So if that's the balance you're working with, I would work with bending my knees a bit more if the heels are challenged to get lower. Bend the knees a bit. That won't make the heels go lower necessarily, but it will help you stretch your back out. Okay. Part of this is back flexibility. Okay, breathing. Okay, now try to get the side waist long. Lift up your heels. So now that we want them up, we want the heels up. And then bring your knees down and take side sage to the right hip down and feel when the waist is in its side zone. Okay, so feel when your bones lean down and where the torso lengthens, and in between the two worlds of the props here, the upper props by your spine wedge, right? This is kind of a wedge to help open up between. So we've got some options with sand. We got the side all the way down to our hip. Yeah. So likely cross fibers work. If you have the sand lengthwise, it might work. It's good to just sample and see how it falls off, where you're right on the edge of balance, and if you can sink right underneath them. Yeah, it's important not to go kind of to the tipping point with your sand. If it feels like it's truly not stable, get where it's fairly stable. Get where your leg is cozy. If you don't want the block on the side, you can always pass on it. Feel how it supports that length and increase the space between the ribs. So you want this chamber to expand. So where your head shifts, I find that sometimes really feeling the side of my head. Some people like the back of their head if that has flexibility in your spine and your shoulders. And arm doesn't have to be over. It could be behind you, opening the chest. Be pec-wise, right? Let the pec open. Notice the surface texture with the awareness of breath. Try to arrive into that pulse. Processing this practice, not just one pose, but the actual layer of poses that we move through, the cumulative effect of them. Now notice the costal breathing, like the intercostals, the muscles between each rib is the space that we're spanning with the breath. It's hard to get like a full belly, full breath in this position. It's more of a costal sensation. So I'm trying to layer the sequence today so it's very isolated with each bracket. So when we move now to the final bracket, it's going to be a very distinct classic twist and then legs up the wall. So really get a feel of this range. Now, everyone in these sessions has gone into a sleeping stage before, so you kind of know how you rotate when you could. So instead of doing it here, right, we're going to do the rotation at the wall. So I want you to let the lower leg lengthen. Start to guide the left knee towards the right. If you've got a block, you're going to go over the hurdle of it. And then moving the sand off of the hip. Okay. So lower down, twist a little bit to get up, turn. Okay, wherever your wall space is, depending on the flooring, you might be okay without your mat. Depends though. If you have a firm floor surface, you don't want to be slippy slidey. Okay. So you're going to go to a wall space. All you need is a bolster and a sandbag and likely a blanket for underneath your head, huh? That would be good. So let's have the blanket on the side and let's put our bolster so it's a couple feet away from the wall. You're going to sit on top of that and use the wall so you have traction for your twist. Okay. So my distance from my wall, when I face my back is to the wall, my seat is on my bolster. Got my sandbag nearby. I'll put my blanket away so I can use it eventually, but I'm going to sit so that my right leg is straight. My left leg crosses over and I want to just reach to the wall. So this is the individual perception, right? And it's also perception, like how flexible is the joint, the shoulder. So, and also if it's flexible but it hurts and you have an injury there, you want to be a little closer to the wall. So when I have the left hand back at the wall, I have the hand turning open. So my thumb is up and my hand is pressing just enough so that I can actually use the right elbow to hook on that left knee. You see that? So the elbow is there on the outer left knee. The right foot flexes. Spine up. Exhale, twist. Spine up. Exhale, twist. Right arm might be able to lengthen. Give it a go. See if you can straighten that arm for a few moments. Should feel more upper back than it might be in a low spine. So it's mid to upper. Okay, now let's try this. We're going to bend through that right arm and hold onto the left knee. And then as we turn back to the knee, change sides. Right leg crosses over left straight leg. And then turn to your other side. Right hand at the wall. So the hand at the wall, as you hook the left elbow outside the right knee, right, the hand at the wall is straight back from your shoulder height. You could go lower. You're not going to go higher, right? That's not an option for our shoulder safety. So at height or a little below is fine. Feel if you can turn your hand though open so the thumb is upwards. Ooh, should feel fairly intense in your back. Breathe. Try to get the shoulders to lower down. Feel the sitting bones and the foot in front of you flexing. Okay, now witness your belly breathing. And now move the right hand to the right knee, uncross through the left arm, uncross through the legs, bring your seat down on the floor, and then push the bolster all the way to the wall, and place the blanket about where your feet are is usually a good estimate, maybe a little closer in actually, not sure. Okay, so we're gonna sit on the edge of the bolster, and we're going to swing the legs up the wall. Okay. So no tutorial on this one today. We're going to roll around to lift the legs up, and we want to have the bolster under the back of the pelvis. Option to put sand on soles of the feet. Spine long. After all that twisty, twirly, topsy-turvy motions in the back, this might feel just what your body orders. Okay, so my arms could go straight back. This might be a nice way to fine-tune and complete your practice. Feel the load of the sand closer to the roots of the toes, closer to the arches of the feet. If that's too much intensity, you can always go without your sand or have it closer to your heels. Rest the eyes from top to bottom, feeling the brain centered and back. If you need to fidget anywhere, upper, middle, back, to let the front of the body feel comfortable, and let the belly rise with each in-breath and relax out and down with the out-breath. You'll kind of get a feel of freedom in the belly. So let's process legs up the wall, waterfall pose. Just feeling that dynamic of the diaphragm in a position so your exhale lengthens. Inhaling slow, 4 to 5 counts. Exhale out of your mouth, let it go. Observe the tailbone. Naturally, the weight of that space is used by your muscles pressing it towards the bolster. So feel how the front of the body, the belly body, actually kind of opens when your tailbone presses down. And then the chest opens just as well. So Viparita Karani, this position is called Viparita Karani, legs up the wall, is actually a back bend as well as an inversion, right? It's a chest opener. It's a spine tickler, I like to think of. It's a little bit in the spine. And now as we change, we bend the knees, we bring the feet off the wall, and we can either carefully drop the sand overhead or guide it behind us. Feet together, knees out, Baddha Konasana, cobbler's pose. Just absorbing the breath. Acknowledging your efforts to be in practice, but the wellness that you receive from the time involved and even the time past the practice, that conscious contemplation. Now guide your knees and feel if they can be still apart. So this is a nice way to come all the way full circle. My knees are still apart. Don't want to get so closed in them yet. So when I roll to the side and you come up to sitting on your bolster, you might be sitting at the wall space, but get a feel for your knees going back open. So they still approach open. You might even take them to diamond, to cobbler's pose in more of a diamond shape. And then let the hands lift up and observe the brain bowing into the heart space, surrendering there. Inhale slow. Exhaling together. Bowing into the heart. Namaste. Okay. All right.